Welcome back to the Community of Practice on Autism Spectrum Disorder and Developmental Disabilities. Today, we are talking about communicating about communication, and we now have a panel of experts facilitated by James Williams. We're going to talk about nonverbal and verbal communication barriers for individuals with autism spectrum disorder, hearing from individuals with autism spectrum disorder or however they would like to identify themselves as. James, thank you for gathering this panel, and I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Tim. So I just want to acknowledge, so there are going to be three people participating today, Aaron, Felicia, and Kai. We were supposed to have a fourth participant, but they sadly had to drop out due to a work conflict. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to briefly talk for about, say, 3-4 minutes, and then turn it over to Aaron and Felicia and Kai, and then I will make a closing statement. And I'm going to use this time right now not to continue the presentation I gave, but to answer some of the questions and comment on some chat here. And I'm actually going to some of the stuff Aaron said. Thank you so much. Yes, people who need more support do tend to be over police. And in fact, Forbes during the COVID pandemic did a whole article where they actually talked about that in the context of the pandemic, about how many freedoms that typical people and people who don't need as much support take for granted, that people who need more support don't have, and how for some of those people during the pandemic actually they allied with the freedom fighters because they saw that those freedom fighters were fighting for freedoms they were fighting for sometimes their entire lives. Yes, double empathy problem. Absolutely. You're right on the money here. And in fact, one of the things that I think about, there's a term actually in many nerd science fiction and nerd communities called Hagbard's Law. And does anyone know the term Hagbard's Law? Hagbard's Law was a term that came from a book series that isn't widely known, but it really is relevant to our conversation here. It was created by these two science fiction authors, Robert Shee and Robert Anton Wilson. And what it basically says is that true communication can only occur among people who are designated as having equal social status, or who feel they have equal social status with each other. That whenever there's a hierarchy going on, the two people will have to change or dilute their communication to please the unspoken rules of that hierarchy. So thank you so much for sharing. Yes, thank you. These quotes, these chats are amazing. Amazing. And I'm going to close this by saying, yes, Tracy, my greatest fear for nonverbal children is that we don't capture the unique ways they can communicate. Absolutely. That is very spot on. So now it's around 10:04. I'm now going to turn the floor over to our first two panelists, Aaron and Felicia. You now may take the floor.
Felicia, would you like to go first?
Sure. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Plain language. It's a wonderful universal language for us to understand things that other people take for granted. I always loved plain language because it helped me to understand things that breaks down simpler words to me. And I am on a team that is doing a lot of work with plain language. Plain language is a wonderful thing to use because you'll be able to understand what they're saying. And sometimes words, I think, a thousand pictures is better also for people who are nonverbal. I use it every day, every single day of my life, because it's helping me. And also when I talk to people and I ask them, what does that mean? And that helps me to filter out the words that they say and say, oh, I get what you're saying. You're saying this. They're saying something in a big word. I said, can you help me understand what it is? And they do. And so that's been a wonderful thing that I really love is plain language, and also the pictures. The pictures always help me also. You know, I think that some people use cartoon characters as pictures, and it's not what we want. We want real life people in our presentations and other things that we use each and every day. And so that's what I use. And now being a totally independent person, right now is using a lot of what do you call pictures and things like that to keep me going and things like that. And I love it with that. Plain language should be a everyday use, not just for advocates, but for professionals. So when you do go to the doctor, they got these big words. Ask them, what does that mean? Can they put the document in plain language, or do you feel comfortable? They should ask, do you feel comfortable? Just let them know you're on the autism spectrum, and help them to get that done, because we adapt to their world. Why can they adapt to our world in this sense of plain language reading? And also with nonverbal, they should be able to have pictures for us to point, okay, does this hurt? Does that hurt? What is this? Whatever. And it should not be where they get frustrated. Yes, it takes time to learn, but at least they can learn our language and we learn theirs. Thank you.
Okay, so I tend to over-prepare, and I'm probably one of those people who talk way too much. So what I'm going to start off with is the larger section, and if there's time to go to the other stuff. So I just want to be respectful of everybody's time. What I'm talking about is navigating conflict, and well, everybody has trouble with that. So I'm just going to come out and say it. Disabled autistic people may want very different things than our family. This is something we share with the rest of humanity, but there is one wrinkle that is specific to autism circles. Historically, autism communities are fairly young. In the early 2000s, 2010s, autism was just beginning to be a household name in the general public. Though really, we've always been here, like since ever. And with this awareness came fear and alarm, pity and tragedy. Since the general public had never seen autism before, common sentiments included, where did all these disabled kids come from? When I was a child, we never saw anyone with autism. And basically the reason why you care about this, why the history is relevant, is it meant that autism circles started from scratch. It means that we're still fighting the same battles that the broader disability community seems to move past a little bit. In autism circles, we still don't always see self-advocates as capable of self-advocating. And especially people with significant disability, they're so dismissed. In truth, larger developmental communities have gone through, we've seen this movie before. Deinstitutionalization, Rosemary Kennedy, living in the community, living full lives as an adult. And the big one, larger DD communities have had more time for self-advocates and our families to discuss. That's part of why I invited Felicia, because autism communities tend to be very segmented, and we don't always cross over well with other people with disabilities. And really, there's a heavy stigma attached to intellectual disability in autism circles. So it's an attempt to bridge that. Point is, we're repeating history. Autism circles are still in the process of hashing out who we are, what we want, and what our lives will look like, including relationships with our families. So what now? Let's be honest. This is Wisconsin. We don't like conflict. We never talk about politics. We'll apologize for bumping into an inanimate object and keep slicing that Kringle into ever smaller slices there's only a molecule thick, just so we're not the ones that take the last slice. It can feel like we have to say everything right so no one's uncomfortable. Most times I don't say anything just because it takes a while to get across our thoughts and feelings. Our lives are more complicated than just sound bites. So here's what I've been working on, trying to get across. On one issue, housing. Honestly, I have mixed feelings. On the one hand, sometimes I agree with parents. Yes, systems and supports are badly broken. Service delivery is often fragmented and piecemeal. For instance, it's supposed to work that people are categorized by their main disability. This really shouldn't compromise their services, but sometimes the system just isn't equipped or knowledgeable enough to adequately provide the right services for people with dual diagnoses. We're in the middle of a caregiver crisis and have been for many years. James, am I getting close to time? I'm on, yeah. Okay, so we're not getting close to time yet.
You're not actually, because Felicia didn't need as much time as I anticipated. I gave her 10 minutes just as I gave you 10 minutes. You guys are good until around say 10:25, 10:26.
Okay, so just want to be sure I'm reading off of my computer screen, so it's can't always see the chat. Just anyway. So back to where I was going before is that, yeah, the system's really broken. It's get back my place. We're in the middle of a caregiver crisis and have been for many years. 85% of families do not have enough workers to staff all authorized hours. So our families fill in the gaps. 40% of family caregivers spend an average of 57 hours per week providing care for family members with a disability. And when one has a significant disability, need more supports, we're going to be spending a lot of time together. And people with significant disabilities need all systems to work together to make a go of community living. I get it. The options aren't great. I get why some parents want to live group living situations. On the other hand, I also heartily disagree with parents and professionals on some issues. I see living in community as a safety in numbers, more eyes and ears watching out for disabled people. Our neighbors will ask, hey, where's Hunter? I didn't see him today. Someone will check out and see if something seems off. Being part of the community, friends, coworkers, the clerk at the grocery store. I would argue this is even more vital for people with significant disability, 24-hour care needs, and non-speaking individuals. These populations are so dismissed and disrespected. Locked behind closed doors breeds abuse and neglect. Once the engaged family board is gone, said wonderful intentional community will devolve into staff walking around with badges and keys. I gotta ask, why aren't we working on Iris? Just a second, my nurse is here. Communication is fraught. I gotta ask, why aren't we working on Iris, one of the adult long-term care programs? So the people with 24-hour care and their families can hire their own team. Why aren't we working on authorizing people having people on call, having staff train other staff, having staff at hospital with your loved one, having overlap for shift change communication? Why aren't we working on care coordination, braided funding sources for wraparound support? How about paid family medical leave? And allowing other family members like siblings, aunts, uncles to have paid medical leave to do the caregiving for their family member so that one person doesn't have to do everything. I get that the system is broken, but a broken system is not a reason to go backward. It's a marching order to support people better in the community. Some people tell me I'm not being realistic, but really, we're looking at the same reality in different ways. Our parents often respond by protecting us. Disabled people are more likely to work for supports that allow us opportunities to grow and help when we need it. We're just coming at the same problem from two different ways. In truth, there is no paradise out there. There is only community, which is stronger, safer, more empathetic, and more capable of supporting people of all types when people know and see each other every day. How am I doing for time, James?
You got 10 more minutes.
All right, cool. I'm gonna finish this off. The role of speaking. I realize our society privileges speech above all other methods of communication. Typing, sign, body language, all of it. And being able to speak eloquently, it does put me in a place of privilege. So today I want to focus on what's useful rather than what's pretty. Speech is useful. Loud is useful. Short and fast is useful. Speech gives me access to formal boards and committees, as well as making decisions about my own life, like telling my caregiver what I want for lunch or where I want to live. And lastly, stigma in autism communities. There is an especially strong stigma against intellectual disability in autism circles. In my experience, this can be a serious barrier to information and/or services with people with dual diagnoses. Stigma with intellectual disability starts in childhood. As a child, I took my cue from the adults. I saw an unspoken easiness around people with intellectual disabilities, and I noticed my classmates with intellectual disabilities were in segregated classrooms, day programs, vocational training, and were headed towards some very degrading, stigmatizing environments. When teachers and parents didn't say anything, younger me was left to draw her own conclusion. Before I knew better, I associated intellectual disability with degradation and dehumanizing treatment, and I judged my self-worth in my intellect and having fewer support needs. Here's some words and phrases that may help break stigma. First, no one should be segregated in places they don't want to live with no choices. Second, everyone should have opportunities to grow, chances to try hard things and make mistakes. 3, everyone should be treated with respect and not bullied. And finally, you are worth something because you are a person. That's all we need. And we're good.
All right, well, Aaron, you had a YouTube video that you wanted to be shown here. So, given that we do have some extra time here, I'm going to use this extra time and share that YouTube video that you forwarded to me. So, Aaron here, Aaron, maybe you can introduce this video since this was your idea to showcase it.
So the video we have here is a book that was written by a Black autistic mom with a non-speaking Black child. So, and I just love their relationship. It shows a day in their lives. So there we go.
All right, I am now going to share it.
Written by an autistic mother of 2 autistic sons, shares what life can look like for families who use nonverbal communication, utilizing tools to embrace their unique method of speaking,
Can people hear
including a
it?
tablet to communicate with others.
Yes,
A
yes.
Day with No Words by Tiffany Hammond. Illustrations by Kate Cosgrove. Early morning chases a long night. Mama pulls the curtains back to welcome the sunlight. My eyes squeeze shut. I'm not ready to get up. But I open my eyes. I reach for my tablet, look at the screen, tap yes on the app. My thoughts are now seen. I am surrounded by voices chattering away.
Do we have sound?
It's as if everyone has so much to say.
Yes.
Some people have big voices that feel like storms in my head. They thrash and they scream. Others have voices that are soft and smooth like freshly whipped cream. Like water, Mama's voice dances around, bobbing up and down as it leaves her throat, much like the waves that carry a boat. Daddy's voice is like air, soft as a light summer breeze that kisses my cheek, strong as the winds of hurricanes that abandon ships at sea. All these people around me, diverse and unique, I hear them all, but they do not hear me. I do not speak. I was born like this, no voice from my lips. I am autistic. I use a tablet to be heard, pushing buttons with pictures that speak my words. Mama taps. Park? Now? No. Crowd? I love the park and quickly tap yes. With no crowd, I'll feel less stress. Mama knew this. She always knows. When I feel comfortable and when my anxiety grows. I do things many people do not understand. I like to stare through the parted fingers of my right hand. I comfort the trees with hugs when the sun disappears. I like to spin barefoot on soft grass after the rain clears. There are some kids at the park with their mamas nearby. The clouds are still gray because the sky has just cried. They all turn to look at me as I jump and flap. One mother sneers, "That boy is handicapped." Mama inhales deeply. Her brows crease. She closes her eyes. Deep breath, release. Mama types quickly, her fingers a blur. The tablet she holds says her words. My son does not speak, but his ears work just fine. The words that you say go straight to his mind. Then Mama turns to me with a smile and taps on her screen. Wet, grass, soft, spin, shoes, socks off, bare skin. And I twirl in damp grass until I can no longer stand. I tap, all done. Mama smiles and takes my hand. Mama turns on her tablet, looks at the cashier, smiles and then types, small fries, root beer. It takes him a moment, but then he pushes buttons too. Mama looks down at me. Your turn. You choose. I tap my tablet quickly. I don't need time to decide. Chicken nuggets, orange soda, a large side of fries. A note from the author. This book is titled A Day with No Words, but did you note all the times Mama and Aiden did use words? Throughout the whole book, right? Every button on Aiden's device is an image associated with the word, and a word is spoken each time he pushes a button. Aiden understands and uses words, yet he doesn't use his voice to speak words. So, why did I choose this title? Too many assume that because Aiden cannot speak words, he must not know words. People associate words with vocalized speech. I've gotten questions like, does Aiden not know words? Can he understand my words? So Aiden doesn't use words to communicate? What's interesting is that humans are constantly using nonverbal communication through facial expressions, hand gestures, touch, and the written word. So, effectively, this book is a form of communication. When you read the words on its pages, you received my message without ever hearing my voice. And Kate shared so much with you through her beautiful illustrations. I'm sure you've heard the expression, A picture is worth 1,000 words. For our family, days like the one in this story help us convey our thoughts, feelings, wants, and needs to our community, demonstrate to our son that we see, understand, and honor him and want to do everything we can to connect with him, provide us with a glimpse into how Aiden experiences the world. Most importantly, spending the day existing as Aiden does gives us a better understanding of his challenges as a non-speaking individual in a world that prioritizes speech. This knowledge, in turn, helps us better advocate for Aiden and others like him. A day with no words is a call to action. We all have a role to play in helping foster understanding, acceptance, love, and accommodations for those like Aiden. Our story is a vehicle for connecting Aiden's world to mine, our family's world to yours, and ultimately all of us to one another. I hope our story inspires you to have your own day with no words, and I look forward to hearing about how it went.
All right. Well, Aaron, thank you very much. And now I'm going to turn it over to our next panelist, Kai Slater. Are you there, Kai?
Yep, I am. So, there we go. All right. So, as James said, my name is Kai Slater. I am 29 years old. Some of my hobbies that I'll share with you that will be relevant to my portion of this panel include art, which I will delve into later in my presentation. But for me, art and creative expression in general is a means for me to communicate with others and the world around me. And I'll get into that later, but some of the creative mediums that I use to communicate include music, video, photo, and literature. And graphic design too, but that's something I'm kind of dabbling in at the moment. I'm just starting to learn more about it. But anyway, moving on. My diagnoses are autism, insomnia, depression, anxiety, and though I have no official diagnosis, I have figured out through my own experiences that I do experience symptoms of PTSD from time to time. Some of the ways that these diagnoses impede my ability to communicate with others include, with regards to my autism, executive dysfunction and emotional dysregulation. As many of you who have experiences with that know, whenever you're having trouble with executive dysfunction or emotional dysregulation, it's like everything is just hazy and it seems impossible to even do the simplest of things like communicating what you're thinking, what you're feeling. And that definitely impacts my ability to communicate at times. With regards to insomnia, sleep deprivation, when you aren't getting enough sleep because of insomnia, it becomes very difficult to think coherently, to focus and concentrate, and that makes it difficult to communicate. And then with my depression, I have mood swings, which, as many of you know, when your emotions are all over the place, it's hard to define them and pin them down and even process them. So that can be impeding on one's ability to communicate. And then with regards to my anxiety, the stress response, that can make things overwhelming. And when that happens, it can become very difficult to express yourself, because everything is so high strung, and it's like everything is so overwhelming, everything is so intense, and it's like everything is dialed up to 11, and can be difficult to properly express yourself. And then with the symptoms of PTSD, the same thing with the stress response. So only a little bit more intensified, if that makes sense. I was nonverbal at the time when I was first diagnosed with my autism. I was about 3 years old at that time. In the years that followed, during the time when I was still a toddler, I eventually progressed from being nonverbal to having echolalia. And for those of you who don't know what that is, echolalia is a condition where instead of speaking in your own words, you repeat what others around you say. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be something that is said to you. You might just hear someone say something and then you say it back to them, even if it wasn't directed at you. So, and after I got past the echolalia and I was able to speak in my own words, I still had problems with pronunciation and stuttering as a child and a teenager. And because of that, I spent the better part of about 10 years in speech therapy. Now, moving on, another part of my presentation today not only deals with my disabilities and how those affect my ability to communicate, but also the intersection between my disabilities and my queer identity, specifically my gender identity. So growing up, so before I do that, I'll share my labels. I am non-binary in terms of my gender identity. And then I also identify as being gray asexual, polysexual, and what that means for me in terms, so with my gender identity and my sexual orientation, what that means for me is that as a non-binary person, I don't identify specifically as male or female. I kind of live beyond the gender binary, and that can make things very complicated. And it's taken me a very long time to get to a point where I can navigate that relatively smoothly. There are still days where I have trouble with that, but it's gotten better over time. And with regards to my sexual orientation, my being gray asexual and polysexual, for me, being gray asexual means that I don't experience sexual attraction a whole lot. I do experience it from time to time, but it isn't a frequent occurrence. Like I might walk down the street and someone may pass me by that other people may like do a double take and be like, oh, wow, that person's really hot. But then I'll just be like, meh. And then other times I'm like, I will do a double take and I'm like, holy cow, that person's really attractive. So it's a little, I don't know, it just depends. It's hard to explain. Hopefully I did a good job of explaining that. And then with being polysexual, I am attracted to more than one gender, if that makes sense. So for me specifically, I have found that I have been, in the past, I have been attracted to people who are cisgender females, cisgender males, and then people who live outside of the gender binary. So I won't go into too many details with that because we do have limited time, but just wanted to get that out of the way. I will move on now. With regards to, yep, cool, got it. With regards to how these communication challenges that I brought up earlier in my part of this presentation, and specifically with regards to the intersection of my disability status and my gender queer identity. Lacking knowledge and experience was definitely an impediment in regards to my ability to communicate. So growing up, I was what most people would define as very tomboyish. I tended to like GI Joes over Barbies. I liked sports instead of, gossiping with the other assigned females in my school, being like, you know, just getting all the juicy details. That was not something I was really interested in. And wasn't really interested in makeup, wasn't interested in all that girly stuff. I did sort of have moments where I mostly identify with being more masculine, but there are times when I feel more feminine, and that's with regards to my non-binary. And being able to identify which end of the gender spectrum I'm feeling closest to on a daily basis has been difficult to figure out, but I have got a good system for that. But that and it lacking the knowledge and experience. So like when I was exploring after I came out as being non-cisgender and I was exploring labels, like there was at one point I kind of experimented with the label of being androgynous. Another time I was kind of experimenting with being gender fluid. And I just each time I kept trying to find a label, a category that I felt fit me best. And eventually I got to the non-binary label, and that fit me. That fit how I felt about my gender on the inside, because that is all what gender identity is all about. It's about how you feel with regards to your gender on the inside, like your identity, how you express yourself, how you express your gender, how you feel about your gender. And limited vocabulary, going on to the next bit, limited vocabulary also impeded my ability to communicate. So not like it wasn't until I was an adult that I started learning a lot of the terms with regards to both disability status and gender identity, like gender dysphoria, body dysphoria, gender binary, gender expression, gender identity, assigned sex, the difference between sex and gender. I didn't have that vocabulary at the time, and that made communicating difficult for me. And with regards to vocabulary related to my disability status, emotional dysregulation, executive dysfunction, speech barriers, communication barriers, occupational therapy, speech therapy, how all these things relate, like living supports, caregiving, stuff like that. Just all this stuff that I didn't have a whole lot of experience or knowledge of, and that I didn't even know the words for. That is a big thing. When you don't know the words for something, it is so difficult to communicate, because you're kind of like, it's almost like you're picking straws out of a hat. It's so difficult. It really is. I'll keep going on to the next bit. What I said earlier about how my hobbies, I find it much easier to communicate through my art. So I'm an aspiring YouTuber, musician, songwriter, and author of books. And I express myself, I communicate my innermost feelings through my artwork. And that has been a really big help with regards to communicating. And like, for example, with music, right? If I'm having trouble communicating how I'm feeling, I can just pick a song that I know, that I can play, that I can sing, and I can play that song and perform it, and then people get a better idea of what I'm feeling. You know, I just have to pick the right song that fits my feelings. Does that make sense? Anyway, and that is it. Does anyone have any questions? I'll go through the chat and see if there were any questions. Let's see.
There's a question from Mike Hipple about those that talked about being nonverbal when you were growing up. Did you use any communication devices when you're nonverbal? And Denise would also like to know your YouTube handle because she is addicted to YouTube and needs more people to follow.
All right, you can answer those questions and time will be up.
Yep, got it. So I do not recall. I was very, very young when I was nonverbal at that time, so I don't have a whole lot of memories from back then. The only person I could think of to ask would be my mother, and I'm not on speaking terms with her right now. She and I don't have a relationship, and that is something that is I'm definitely not going to get into today, because that is a whole lot of baggage that is just for another time anyway. My YouTube handles, I have several. So one of the things I've learned since I've started getting into YouTube is that it's better to separate your channels into niches. So I have one handle that's just my personal handle. It's Kai Slater. And I'll share links in the chat to all of my handles. But with regards to my different niches, I have one that's called Slater Serenades. I'm going to be doing music song covers and open mic performances that I'll be recording. And I'll also eventually be sharing my own original songs on that channel as well. And then I also have another one, Nerdy Specs. That is gonna be a pop film and television reaction video channel where I'll be doing like reaction videos to popular film and television. Like I'm currently working on making reaction videos to the new Disney Plus series, Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I loved the books. I was obsessed with the books as a kid growing up, and I still love them to this day. So suffice to say, I'm really enjoying doing the reaction videos for Percy Jackson and the Olympians. So, but like I said, I will link my handles in the chat box. And so if you guys want to follow me, you can.
Thank you very much, Clay. So now, for time, I'm not going to go into any more stories, but I'm going to make a little closing statement for the panel. Thank you, Kai, Aaron, Felicia, for sharing what you shared. And what I'm going to say is this. In the 1990s and 2000s, a group of amazing autism researchers, Brenda Smith-Miles, Carol Gray, Pamela Wolfberg, and a bunch of others, they established that social issues are some of the primary issues that autistic people face. They established that autistic people struggle with many unspoken rules in society, and established in schools that accommodating those social issues and those deficits of instinctively understanding those unspoken rules, as Brenda Miles called the hidden curriculum, are the most important accommodations in educational settings. However, and I do not blame them for this, they've done amazing work. One thing that they never fully researched or acknowledged was they believed that the primary issue was lack of education. Since autistic people don't have the instincts to understand social rules, all you need to do is teach the rules and the autistic individual will be able to behave properly. What they ignored, however, is that autistic people live in a different social reality, have different communication needs, and oftentimes have communication needs that go against rules of appropriate communication in society. What was ignored, though I do not blame them, I'm on great terms with them and respect their work, is that sometimes it's not that an autistic person doesn't know a social rule, it's that the social rules can harm them. And many of those social rules that harm autistic people are based on rules of communication. We also have to remember that one of the biggest other obstacles, we talk so much about inclusion, but we forget one of the biggest obstacles of inclusion is communication. And here's why. What we forget is that we live in a society that tells people that the more inclusive a group is, the less appropriate certain things can be communicated. The more a group includes people, the more society restricts and has stricter rules on appropriate communication based on how much we include. Example, a clique of close friends has very few rules of what's appropriate and inappropriate to communicate. If an outsider joins that clique, suddenly now they're told, okay, you can't communicate things appropriately. And we have to remember, and I will close this, the biggest barrier to inclusion in our society are society's own rules for appropriate communication. Kirsten Schwartz, you say, what's an example of a social rule that would harm an autistic individual if they follow it? And I think the one big example is that I heard a speaker talk about this at an autism conference. One of the three hardest things that autistic adults face with are health, hygiene, and finances. Guess what? Health, hygiene, and finances are three of the deepest conversation taboos we have in society. Three things that the societal laws of appropriate communication prohibit us from talking about openly. And it's not a coincidence. Those are some of the three hardest things for autistic people to handle independently in adulthood. Thank you all for listening. I'm not going to take up more of your time because I know we have a break here, and I look forward to seeing the next presenter.
Well, we do, James, and I'm going to make an executive decision that I'm going to take 5 minutes of people's break to see if they have any further questions for the panelists, because I found it was phenomenal. So any questions that people, thank you for answering and Kirsten's. Any other questions that people would like to put into the chat or raise your hand, unmute, and I will try to find you and call on you. But any questions or comments?
I apologize, Tim, for not acknowledging.
Nope, you're fine. Because obviously people would rather go to break. So, you know, I'm totally not the right person here. So not seeing anything come up. Thank you, panelists, so very much. You touched my heart today. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back at the top of the hour. Oh, there we go. How can someone advocate for a children's elementary school concerning communication needs? So as people that are now growing in advocacy daily, as we all are, I'm still trying to figure out how to stick up for myself at work sometimes. What are some ways to advocate with schools?
One way you can do is be on the PTA board for your school district, and also you can run for school board and be a part of the parent committee at your school, or work with your parent coordinator, and also be a part of your child IEP. And one that's many ways you can advocate. There is a Disability Advocacy Day through the Wisconsin Board with people with developmental disabilities on March 20th of 2024. So you can be able to advocate with the legislatures on the things that you have for your child's needs in the school system.
I would like to expand on what Felicia said. There's actually several people in the chat today that I noticed who are actually from the same class as me, but there is this program for people with developmental disabilities and family members of people with disabilities who can learn. So I know for a lot of people out there, some of the suggestions that Felicia made may seem very daunting, and that is normal, but there is this program, and Felicia is actually from the same class as me, and Tracy, we all participated in this program through the Board for People with Developmental Disabilities, or the BPDD, called Partners in Policymaking. And it teaches you all the skills that you need to know in order to work with your local legislators. And that includes your school board. So you can learn all these skills that you need to know. And some of the skills that they teach you are like being able to do an elevator pitch, where you have to have 2 minutes or less to get your point across to them. You learn about the disability rights movement and about all the, excuse my French, all the badass activists that and advocates that were that participated in that movement back then. One of my personal favorites is oh crap, lost my train of thought. Dang it. Judy Heumann. She's one of my favorites. She's really cool. But this whole program teaches you all of that, and it can really help you in developing your skills to advocate for students in your school district. So hopefully that helps.
And I also know that there are many family members on this attending today. Please feel free to go ahead and share what's worked for you and how you've advocated at your school in the chat as well. And we'll try to accumulate that and put that together as well. So just saying, please feel free to continue to put those in there. Any last questions before we go take a short break, or any last comments from any of the panelists? Now that you've heard each, I'm just curious because yes, Aaron, I know you've heard each other talk. Aaron, go ahead.
Start. Be weird, rough, and be that parent. You will learn. You'll make a hell of a lot of mistakes, but you will learn and get better. Just start.
I love that. Be that parent. That might be my favorite phrase of the day. Well, actually, no. Before we take a break, I want to repeat my favorite phrase of the day, if I can find it. Hang on. It is Aaron Miller. Oh, where'd it go? I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget it. Oh, so much in the chat. Oh, you all are amazing. There is no paradise out there, but there is community. I hope that in our lives that we strive for that inclusive community of bringing people together, because we're going to have a better life when we do. So we will be back at the top of the hour with Abby Marks and Stasia Wilson, and we're going to be talking about AAC and some latest technologies, and it's going to be fantastic. So take a short break. Again, if you've been staring at the screen, stare at something far away for a little while, get some water, stretch, do what you need to do. We'll see you in about 6. Thank you so much.